every part of comics and artwork is a form of communication with other people. It's not just here, let me direct my thoughts at you as a dictation of concept, but it's hoping to convince you of how cool you think a visual could be or a story could be. And you're trying to communicate ideas in one part storytelling and greater part just graphic impact. You're hoping to relate a sense of energy, urgency, and enthusiasm to people. That there's a lightning of spirit that comes out of superheroes that has always worked for me. That it isn't really about the practicality of what they might do. It's not the practicality about grown men punching each other in costumes. It really isn't about that. It's a visual metaphor. And that metaphor could be for a lot of things, but it's mostly just about the energy and enthusiasm that can be found in the fun of life.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for another Word Balloon Live, the comic book conversation show. John Suttress here, Jeff Parker here. Good to see you, Jeff.
Hello.
Hello. We got a brand new Kickstarter campaign underway for you, Blighter. Yes. Give us the 10-cent elevator pitch on Blighter.
The truest elevator pitch really is not the one I should give, but when I say it, people get it right away. It's essentially, what if Mowgli from the Jungle Book were actually a little girl, and instead of teaming up with Baloo and Bagheera, she teamed up with Shere Khan, and then they killed monsters together? That really gets you closer to what the book is and the feel than almost anything.
I like it. That's cool. I'm going to bring up a picture of Blighter here.
Oh,
One
thank
second.
you.
There he is.
There he goes. This is Drew drew a few random pages for the Kickstarter, and at this, the little chunks flying away, or he's been disguised with a hologram to appear as a regular Earth person. He's from Earth, but it's another dimension, and so he does go around. He's still dressed like his whole world is very Victoriana. It's all extreme, like colonial England, but if everybody were beast people and monsters. And he sees our world as a little backwater that doesn't make any sense to him. And he's here without ruining too much of the story. You'll forget it by the time. It's going to take months to make the book, so I'll go ahead and tell you because you'll forget. Their planet has essentially been treating us like Australia when it was a penal colony, and sending all of their worst murderers over here just to get rid of them because they didn't want to have to go through, they outlawed capital punishment. So they just just send them to Earth, send them to what they call the New World, and they call themselves the Old World. Which, by the way, I forgot who I was talking about with just at the Rose City Comic-Con this weekend, of what prisoners must have thought getting sent to Australia, like, oh, they sent me to this tropical paradise with the coral reef and all this stuff instead of rainy England all the time. Man, I'm a hell on earth over here. And obviously there are a lot of poisonous things in Australia, but for the most part, that was a pretty sweet deal for a lot of the debtors or whoever they sent over at the time.
That's funny. Absolutely, man. Yeah, I think of Mysterious Island, that movie from the early 60s.
Harryhausen. But anyway, eventually the royals on that planet, like enough people make a stink, like, oh, we've been researching this new world, and these people actually have their own societies and things. It's like, this is inhumane of us to keep sending all these murderers over there. They're killing people. And so to us, it just seems like we're being attacked constantly by weird creatures, and it's a play on a lot of the movies now. Like I say in the video, it's like, well, when you go out into the woods and you can't make a sound or you're going to get killed. Or what was it? Bird Box was the one where you can't look at them, that Sandra Bullock was in.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay. This is the little box with the birds in it. Anyway, it's all these strange rules. You know, the way horror works now, no one explains it. They just throw you into it all the time. We're kind of playing with that. And so, you know, people are being attacked by all. It is Bird Box. Thank you.
Yeah, Robert says it's Bird Box.
Robert's always coming in there for me. Thanks for having my back. So, you know, it's a lot of things like that. Strange creatures. No one knows where they're coming from. And they send Blighter over as a tracker to kill them. Yeah, it's like, okay, we'll decide that murder is not illegal on the New World, and you go over there and dispose of them for us and keep it hush-hush and don't talk about it when you come back. And Blighter is essentially just what you see. He's a tiger. He wants to hunt things. He lives for it. He feels particularly old school and like, yes, this is what I was made for. So yet he has such little disrespect for our world, such little respect for our world, that he doesn't do things like bother to read our maps or study our news, which would easily tell him where things are happening, you know. So he's like, he's having a bit of a time finding some of these monsters until this little girl who's been orphaned, she's about 10 years old and grew up in South London, named Arvy, meets up with him in the United States. You'll see how that plays out in Estes Park, Colorado. And she's pretty much been running from orphanage to adoptee home everywhere. She was in an initial attack that killed her parents, and she's marked kind of the way wasps mark you with a pheromone. I don't know if you've ever accidentally swatted a wasp. It's the stupidest thing you could ever do.
I did as a little kid, yeah.
Yeah, and because then they all come after you. Well, that's what happens with her. Like, she's always being hunted by these things because she's got like a psychic imprint of the initial attack. And so she doesn't want to stay with anyone who adopts her because she's just going to get their house destroyed and them killed. And she eventually runs into Blighter and decides, oh, like this guy is here to kill the monsters like me, you know, and she's determined to work with him, even though he's like, what is this little New Worlder following me around for, you know? So there's a fun dynamic going on there. The main dynamic I like is, of course, Blighter himself is he would ordinarily be the villain in a story, except these other things are so much worse. And I love having a big swaggering egomaniac as the lead because it's just a gas to write. I mean, it's hard to write someone who's supposed to be great and humble and all that. And Blighter's none of those things. So, you know, he's just a big, proud tiger who with an outsized reputation, and he'll tell you about it at the drop of a hat. Hopefully that gives you a sense of what it is.
Absolutely. No, that's cool. All right. Robert's already there and asks how many pages is this one and done? Do you have more stories in the world planned?
Yes. But this initial story is going to establish a lot of things. It's we currently have it at 90, and our stretch goals, I can't remember what the number was. If we hit a certain number, it's going to 110.
Okay.
So it'll be a good sized graphic novel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been playing around drawing Blighter myself. So like, I'm going to try to squeeze in a little bit for me too, because I love drawing cartoon.
Yeah.
animals.
That's awesome, man.
You know, so it's like, you know, I'll horn in on Drew's action a little bit, but you know.
Do you still draw every day, or do you, even just for your own like amusement, or?
What I usually do is I often, as they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. It's like you can either give an artist a big block of text describing something, or I could sketch it out in 2 minutes and say, here, it's like this. And then they do a better version of it than I was going to do, because they've already got the rough out of their head, and then they can jump. When you're starting with the empty blank page, it's a daunting thing sometimes for some people. Who was I talking to on Twitter the other day? I think Steve Bryant, who's a great artist, and I were talking about this. And it's the thing of some artists have the image in their head already. Like Jungji. It's sorry, I just blanked. Damn it! Well, I'm getting his name. Who's the guy who draws the just giant scenarios like they're already there, and he's just sitting there letting the pencil go?
Talk about Darrow or
Jungji Kim?
I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. And I'm not. His name isn't clicking with me. I'm sure I've seen it before.
It's Jungji Kim.
Okay.
I don't know why I was screwing that up. I think it's because I want Kim to be at the beginning. But why? I don't know. Like I'm some expert on how Koreans do their names. But anyway, if you ever watch him, you'll see these videos where he's drawing, and it looks like he's just drawing a little headlight, and then suddenly that becomes a car, and then it turns into this massive panorama of you're like, how is he doing this? There must be a trick to it. No, his brain works that way. He's a genius. And we were talking about that, like how some people have the picture in their head, they put it down, and then some people, it's more like the way you and I really don't know what we're about to say until it starts coming out of our mouth. It's like, I don't know what the sentence is I'm getting to the end of. I like it forms as I go, and I hope I can land the plane, I guess. It's like, and a lot of people draw that way. They start just kind of drawing a figure, and then they start to figure out the environment around it. And there's all kind of artists appear. That's an interesting thing to bring up. Just talk to an artist next time about, like, when you're visualizing, what's coming to you and what are you going with, and how are you getting to your end? Are you doing it the same way every time? And obviously everybody does thumbnails. Everybody draws something little to see if you have a nice composition, tiny first.
Sure.
And then, because if you can read it at this size, then it's going to make a nice 6x9 page. Well, it's much larger, and then shrunk back down to 6x9.
How did you did you conceive of this with Drew Moss, or did you bring Drew this idea?
No.
When does Drew come in?
This is something that I should have done a long time ago, because I actually did a story that's kind of a prototype of this with my good buddy Ben Dewey in Dark Horse Presents years ago. They gave us like a week. They said, hey, we got a slot. You want to fill it? I went, okay. And it's a ridiculous amount of time to try to get a whole, whatever, 10-page story or 8-page or whatever it was. I need to come up with something really interesting, write it really fast. Ben's got to draw it. We got, color it. It was ridiculous. But with the gun to my head, I got the things, I got the basic concept of this hunter who was here to track down the creatures from his world, and the name Blighter. Except at the time, that wasn't actually his name. It was just a corruption of his name. And in the years since, I've realized, no, just name things the thing they are. It just confuses people when you try to do clever hand waving. So anyway, we did that, and we thought, Dark Horse probably asked us to do this as a book. No one asked us to do anything. Never heard of it again. I had a really hard time trying to find the issue when I went back later to look for it. And Nate Cosby, who's the editor on this project, he's kind of running everything. He asked if I had any ideas that I thought would work for a Kickstarter. And I said, there's one idea that I keep coming back to and I keep wanting to mess with, because I love the name and I love the idea of it, but I didn't think we had any time to execute it. And Blighter was much more this kind of alien looking dude. And it just wasn't working. And I contacted Ben first, and he just had way too much on his plate. So I asked his permission. I went, "Do you mind if I go retool this elsewhere?" I didn't, and that's what you should do. You got to watch it. You don't want to leave people out.
Of course.
So Ben said, "If you need anything from me, let me know." But yeah, that's fine with me.
Nice.
So, and then I made him swear that he would create something new with me when he gets free time. And now he's, his soul is mine. He's bound to do it.
His soul is mine.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. And so then Nate and I started kind of casting around, trying to figure out who would be a good artist. We were looking at different people. And Nate had been working with Drew, editing him on Dynamite books. And he said, it's like, I think Drew would be great for this, man. He just nails stuff so fast. And then so we ran the concept by him, and he was right. Like in no time, because the main thing I realized was, okay, he shouldn't be an extremely alien looking guy because he's already kind of unlikable. So he should be and also I kept describing him to people as like, think of the way Milt called Drew Shere Khan in the Jungle Book and stuff like that. And it's like, clearly I want him to be a tiger. And what what was probably holding me up? Well, I was probably thinking like, no, I can't do a tiger, man. Mike and Todd, Waringo and DeZago did Kaj and Tellus. Now I was like,
I will confess, when I saw Blighter, Tellus came to mind.
Yeah, I'm ripping off Tellus. But then I realized wait, it's not like Kaj is the first talking tiger character either.
Right, Talkie Tawny, forgot to.
Talkie Tawny, Tigger, Hobbs. It's like, and in fact, next week I'm gonna do a thing about the pantheon of talking tigers on my updates.
Funny.
Yeah, and say like, actually, this is a grand tradition, like bears. It's like, why not? Yeah, Drew is stellar. And I finally just caved in and realized, like, I just want him to be a tiger. I was still even hanging on to it. Like, let's try to color him alien colors, but it didn't look right. It just looks like we didn't know what we were doing. And then, so we just made him a tiger. But then I kind of messed with the drawing a little bit and like, hey, what if he has a bit of a mustache and beard? And that looked
I love that actually.
Yeah, and it gave it a nice little flair and everything. So
he's got a Terry Thomas there.
Yeah, he does have a bit of a Terry Thomas. Like, he's very aristocratic. Fancies himself the great hunter.
Yeah.
And that started really coming together, especially once we started putting him in outfits. Like, I wish I'd scanned this thing, but I'll be putting it up this week. I'll show you just some of the other kind of things he wears. It's like a safari outfit and pith helmets and stuff like that.
Yes. Commander McBride.
Man, that's like, I know you've heard me before, but anyway, so that started really working. It turns out it's yet another thing Drew's good at drawing. I didn't give him a drawing of Arvy. He just immediately did a drawing of her, and I went, perfect, nailed it right away. It's like, so there, it's like, to me, like, I think we've talked about this before. Titles are one of the hardest things. I just like, I could come up with a whole epic series of something easier than I can come up with a good catchy title that gets you there faster. And that's why I didn't want to give up on that. It's like, oh, it's an old-timey British insult. And yet it also means somebody who kind of destroys everything in their path. It just works perfect. So I'm glad Nate asked me and said, like, what have you been doing? And it makes me think there's a lot of stuff like that like I've tried once, maybe it didn't catch on, but it's like, in music and movies and everything else, this happens all the time, and people just keep trying to bring it back till they get it. And so I'm gonna try that approach some more. I've got some other things that I was really happy with, and I shouldn't have let fall by the wayside, that I'm going to try to bring back, especially if this really pans out.
Understood.
Yeah, Blighter, if Blighter takes off, get ready for my other ideas that I've got packed in the vault that have been needing to be used.
Well, it also reminds me a bit of the first thing we ever talked about, and that was Interman back in the day. I mean, it's that, again, the wildlife and everything, and kind of
Interman was
Interman
a name
had
first
his.
thing too.
I'm sorry.
Interman was a name first thing too.
Okay.
Actually, it was because it was at the same time, as I told you way back then, I was reading a lot of Stephen Jay Gould natural history essays because I was just into his stuff, and I was reading a lot of like Trevanian books, like the Eiger Sanction. So they were just coming together, and suddenly the name the Interman popped in, and I really liked it. And this is weird. It seems like all my ideas start at Dark Horse, die, and then come out somewhere else. I was talking to people at Dark Horse about it, and they didn't like the name. And then I briefly, for a while, was working with Manticore, which of course a lot of things have been called that. And then when I decided to publish it on my own, I went back to the original name because it's like, I still like it, and it's my money. And that's the other thing. That's what's different now. Like, I put that out traditionally. I borrowed money, and I solicited it, and I just tried every venue online to kind of get the word out, and then put it in the Diamond catalog, and and it kind of went from there. But now there's this. If there had been Kickstarter back then, I definitely would have tried this. But it's interesting. I've also been watching over the years. Apparently, it took me 10 years of making sure Kickstarter was not going to just vanish into the air. While all my friends have been putting out books like crazy with the thing. I'm sitting there like, I don't know.
Is this your first Kickstarter?
This is a flop. It is my first Kickstarter.
Wow, because Robert was wondering what made you do this as a crowdfunder and everything, and obviously, you see the viability of it. Hell, I'm thrilled for you. You started on Tuesday, and you have already reached your initial goal.
Yeah,
so that's great.
Yeah, that was very nice. I'll freely admit I loaded it up with ringers. I asked some of my heavy hitting collaborators from over the years, like, it's like, I know you're all super busy. It's like, I will not be insulted if you can't do this. But if you want to contribute a commission or character of choice to a tier or whatever, you can. And I was saying that also because some had already said that before, but I couldn't remember who told me they would do that. So I just reached out to like a bunch of great artists, and almost all of them came back with yes. And that was, I won't lie, John, it was an emotional day. Who got me first? Jonathan Case got it in first. And I was like, oh, I was having trouble keeping it together. And then they started coming in. Shaner comes in, Gabe writes to me and everything. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can't believe. Like, then it's like, and it really makes you step up. You think, okay, I'm not wasting these guys' time. I'm going to put out something good to justify that they put time into me.
I'm with you.
It really does, and it gets eyes on the project. Everybody thinks, well, Mike McCone's doing a painting. He must think this needs to exist. It's like Sandy Gerald. Yeah, it's like Declan Shalvey. Shalvey was proud. He went really early.
Now, are they doing like sketches of Blighter and things for the book in addition to?
No, they're
go ahead.
I don't know if they feel like it. They're obviously, I'll make it happen, but no,
they're offering.
We're just making it so we're not making it like you have to get the tiger or anything. Like Steve Lieber came through with 3.
Wow.
Steve is like that. I mean, the guy will give you the shirt off his back and fix your car tire and get you going or whatever. He just makes things happen for people, and it's amazing. And also he'll sit down and do that. I guarantee you he'll do all 3 of those in a day. He'll make a whole day of it where he's going to do that.
So there's sketch slots for people to request a character, and then they'll get what they want.
And to different levels of finish, like with Steve and Hardman. I think they're doing like 11x17s, fully inked with background.
Wow.
And some people are like, I think Doc Shaner's is a figure but colored. There's all so they're doing whatever they feel like they're comfortable with doing for the thing. And we're telling people we're trying to let people okay, don't ask for like a top-down city view or anything like that. Go easy. Just pick your favorite character you want to see them do. This is a good chance, especially right now while we're not having a ton of shows and it's hard to get a commission. Like a lot of these people just don't do any commissions. Hey, Crystal.
Yay, Crystal.
Oh, those are the best people in Brooklyn.
Crystal and Freddie, absolutely. That's awesome.
Unless you're not still in Brooklyn. Sorry.
I think they are.
No, or when you are in Brooklyn, you're the best people in Brooklyn. But yeah, so everybody's doing. I myself, I felt like, well, I better do some, and I thought I would be like last to go. I was like, all right, I'm going to do 5 commissions. They're gone in 2 days, and I was like, oh well, there's 5 drawings I got to do. So I'm going to start warming up on those. I have no idea what people are going to ask me. I might try to get mine done a little bit early.
That's great.
I'm glad you agree that you're the best people in Brooklyn.
They're the best people in, well, I think she means that they're still in Brooklyn, of course.
I'm sorry. I took it as, yes, we are indeed.
I miss them. I miss them very much.
People from here.
Let's see here. All right. Man, Robert's got good questions here. He's beat me to the punch. What made you choose an orphan as the everyman? This is a personal question. I'm adopted.
Oh, man.
And stories with orphans hit a soft spot for me.
I feel like you got to watch it because orphans get used so much in fiction.
Sure.
Mainly because people just don't want to trouble with well, why is this kid getting to go have adventures? Where's their parents letting them do it? So that's often a thing. With her, I just wanted to show a very capable kid because I wanted a kid, and I just wanted to show that she's very capable because she's had no choice but to, really deal with everything. So literally, almost all the entire life she can remember, something's been trying to kill her. This is one of those things where you got to strike just the right tone. Like we're doing a all ages thing in the Pixar sense, but there's parts that are a little scary. I wouldn't say it's for little kids. But I would think probably when your kid's around, depending on your kid's level of, how sensitive they are, once they're about 7 or 8 on up to retirement, this is a fine book for them. That's cool. Robert, thanks for letting me know that. And I do it she's not being completely left to her own devices. In the opening scene, we're in Estes Park, Colorado, which is a beautiful place if you've never been. And the social worker who's trying to keep up with Arby and get her into a home has chased her down to here because she keeps just squirreling away from everybody because she's trying to keep everybody safe, and they don't realize that.
Okay.
So there is someone trying to protect her. And so it's someone who's caring and loving and good at their job trying to protect her, but she's going to end up with the self-obsessed Tiger Man who doesn't want kids and doesn't want anything because, damn it, that's just a more fun story. But that character will keep figuring in. So I don't know if that answered that at all, but I gave it.
You did. Yeah.
Robert.
No, definitely. Okay. So yeah, first graphic novel, when you say an extra 20 pages, would it be an additional story or would it be fleshing out more of the big story?
I always do this. I always kind of figure out what's the fastest way I can tell a story. And then what scenes would I put in if I had a little more time?
Okay.
And so it's just what scenes would I put in if I had a little more time, at least at the moment. That's the way I've got it. I've been known to change things but you can't tell. So, it's like it could be a little extra story. There could be a prequel in it. We're actually doing this. Sandy Gerald and I did Meteor Men with Oni, and they came back to us and wanted to do a new version of it and offered us 20 more pages. And we're like, great, because now we can get a couple of scenes that we weren't able to get the first time in the book because the budget was what it was and the size was what it was. But now we could add in a couple more scenes, and that I think really are going to just make the book extra special. And that's coming out next week. So if you're in the comic shops with your mask on, look for the new edition of Meteor Men. I'm sorry, I totally started talking about Meteor Men. It's not Meteor Men. Underground with me and Lieber.
Oh,
I'm getting it confused based on what I was just proofing. Yeah, I guess I just spoiled that one. So anyway, ignore what I just said. There's not going to be a new version of Meteor Man being announced soon. There is going, but no, next week Underground comes out. And we did tweak the files, though, and it does look really sharp. They got some really nice printing on these books. I got early ones that I sold at Rose City Con, and they're just gorgeous. So,
okay, well, that's cool. New expanded Underground coming up. So
and Meteor Man.
And Meteor Man. That's great. Well, in both cases, that's great.
Yeah, I got a lot of Oni stuff coming up.
Good, man. That's wonderful. All right, so you've explained why an orphan. Why an anamorphic hero?
I like animals. It's the most basic, simple thing, but and I wanted to, even though this is kind of like steampunk sci-fi, I whenever I do something of my own that's not work for hire, I always go as far away from superheroes as I can. And it's not that I have anything against superheroes. Obviously, I don't. I do a lot of that work. It's just that I don't believe people, for the most part, they don't want to see you do superhero. They want the superheroes they grew up with. It's like, and I'm forever trying to talk people out of creating a whole new world of superheroes. Everybody wants to be like, hey, I'm Stan Lee, and this is my new bullpen. And I'm not kidding. I get emails like this, and I know other creators get them all the time, where it always goes like this. Somebody came into some money, or they saved up a lot because they made money. They want to produce comics. They always want to do like 10, 12 comics and everything. It's always a new superhero universe. You know what's going to happen. You saw CrossGen. Which, by the way, a lot of great artists came out of from working there. They got even better while they were there.
Yes.
And they all got they all got better at swimming because they were all over in the Gulf of Florida. But these things don't work. People they either want the DCU or they want the Marvel universe. And with a few limited wins here and there, they generally don't care about superheroes they didn't grow up with. There's some things that take on, like The Boys is doing gangbusters, right now.
Right.
Amazon. Yeah. And things like that, but not as many as people are trying to make happen. It's like there's other genres to serve. And that's
agreed.
It's just more fun for me to switch it up. Like, I still haven't really done much of a Western. I would love to do that at some point.
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's like, again, that's another one I have to like drag Steve Lieber into, because he's like one of the few who can draw horses out of his head.
That's good to know, man. No, and I agree with you. I get a lot of word balloon pitches for people creating superheroes, and I'm like, DC and Marvel kind of really have that down.
I mean, they've got it. They own the word. They
The
they
trademark
ownership of the word. And they've now got channels and stuff devoted to everything. It's hard territory to muscle in on. You don't you don't find the biggest mafioso gang and just go try to crash into their territory. You go somewhere else.
Well, or I always say when it comes to podcasting and stuff, what do you want your podcast to say? Because there's a lot of competition, and especially in the world of comics, there's a lot of comic book podcasts out there. So what makes yours different? And I don't want to dissuade someone from doing a superhero book, but by the same token, it's like, what new thing do you have to say? I mean, you may not, and it's like, look, I've always wanted to do Superman. This is my version of Superman. I can't do Superman, and I understand. But I also, I wonder. I wonder if that's like the best direction to try to get attention and stuff. So, Mission Comics and Art really wants a Parker Lieber Western. That would be a great thing.
Thank you, Lee.
And Crystal agrees. That, I think you put it well, man.
Yeah, I mean, like they've got thousands of characters. Just go do the work for it. See if they'll hire you. Do the work for them for a little while. Get it out of your system.
I'm looking at the Kickstarter to see you've got, and you even said you didn't want to put a lot of bells and whistles in terms of incentives and things like that. It's great that you've got your
because I don't know what I'm doing, John. That's the important thing. I mean, no, we've got again Nate's editing. We have Laser Melina Weber running the thing, reminding me when I need to do stuff, and giving great advice that I wouldn't have known. I am all about the good advice and the guidance. It's not, I'm not going to go in there and create a bunch of stuff that then later I find out, oh, it costs a fortune to make this stuff and that eats up the whole budget and then you can't make the book. No, we're just trying to, it's like the point is the book. And and even though maybe sometime before the end of it, we'll go, okay, fine, we'll do this one little print or something. I doubt it, because we just want to do the book and we want to make sure the book exists. I'm not slagging people who do merch. A lot of people do great stuff and they do cool enamel pins and things like that people get excited about. But I just, maybe I'll think about that if we make it to a volume 2. For now, it's just all about getting the book out in the world.
This is how I do my Patreon. I mean, I'm like, hey, if you like Word Balloon, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, I understand. And you got to kind of, I focus on the product rather than the side stuff. And again, no disrespect to people that do the side stuff. Well, I can't. I'm not organized that way.
Yeah, I am very like single track focused. I have given up on the idea that I can multitask. I can't.
I understood.
I do the one thing, and then like when I switch over it as a freelancer, where that always bites me is stuff always starts coming to me for the thing that isn't on the deadline today, and it's like, but you can't turn the muse away. You've got to work on it. Like if you think, no, I'll get back to it later. Later you'll go, what was it? I had it so clearly in my head, and no, so whatever's coming to me, I write it down, I go through it and get it done so I can get back to the thing that's actually on deadline.
Understood. Well, that's funny. And Magic K wants to distract you with a question, wants to know if you have any Shazam, Captain Marvel projects coming in the future.
I don't, but as much as I just slag superheroes, if they suddenly like gave me a little autonomy with doing Captain Marvel, Shazam, oh yeah, I could do that. I could on a dime. That was a fun thing that Evan Shaner and I got to do with the Convergence issues.
Yeah.
We did the 2-part Captain Marvel family.
The original Marvel family. Absolutely.
Yeah. And got to have our talkie tawny moment and all kinds of stuff. And even Uncle Dudley, everybody was in there. Mr. Adam, Dr. Savannah.
Did Hoppy make it?
Huh?
Hoppy, the Marvel Bunny, did he make it?
No, I never thought of him as that crucial to the to the Marvel family.
It really was. It seems like going back to the golden age, funny animals were in vogue. Why not? Here's our funny animal. Here's Hoppy.
Well, those Fawcett Captain Marvels, the Whiz Comics, they had a really unique world. And in my mind, they still can't really replicate it, where like a whole story could just be about Captain Marvel, decides to live as a hobo and that's the story, and it's hilarious. Or he becomes a witch or something like that.
Well, and also what I loved about Fawcett was they made room for the other art styles, and I love that
They just had the best art, John.
Yeah.
I mean, the Superman at the time, they were trying hard to keep up with him.
Absolutely. That's why they sued him.
Yeah.
They were eating their lunch.
They sued him out of existence because they couldn't beat him.
But also, you had that great, CC Beck design for Captain Marvel, but Mac Rayboy just doing that kind of beautiful storybook art for Junior.
Yeah.
You couldn't deny it.
It's weird that, like, how come this character, he's not even the main one, Captain Marvel Jr., suddenly gets the most gorgeous art of any character? Yes, Hobo Witch. Of any character, because Rayboy was so good.
Yeah.
And the covers were just unbeatable. Those Wiz covers were the best.
Oh, yeah.
And Superman's covers were good, but they weren't up there with it. And like I said, they sued him out of existence, and then later brought him in. And it's like, once he's in the context of all the other heroes, the only way they can really make him stand out is to go with the kind of Tom Hanks big sort of thing that they do now, where he is like a kid who's big, and that's fine, but it's still not the Captain Marvel I really like.
No, I kind of liked in the original comics that it was like when Marvel made Rick Jones and Cosmic Captain Marvel together, and they were two different characters, but would switch places in the universe so that the other could be. And literally, especially in the 40s Fawcett's, Billy and Captain Marvel would have conversations with each other.
Yeah, they were two separate entities.
Yeah.
And here was my thing, not to spoil what I would do, but I did have an idea that would kind of like get that and connect it to the way that he's done now and have my cake and eat it too. But again, they're not asking for that, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And again, maybe it's having read and in my mind kind of pigeonholed what the Marvel Universe looks like. Not only the classic stuff, but when Ordway was doing it in the 80s and 90s and Power of Shazam and everything. I appreciate what Jeff Johns did to update the character, but also there's part of me that's like, there's too many characters now. And I really miss the idea of it really being Billy's story, in particular. Also, I don't like Mary as, and again, forgive me, everybody, but I don't like Mary as an older character. I like Mary as his younger sister or his twin sister. And, again, that they were equals, if anything. I mean, Mary had her great solo adventures as well. Yeah, but what I did like, I will say that it was something Johns did in the early 2000s. I loved in JSA when Billy and Stargirl, Courtney, were dating. And, she's one of the few that knew that Billy was Captain Marvel. And there's one moment where Jay Garrick goes to Captain Marvel and is like, hey, that's a little girl. What the hell are you doing? And it's like, Cap can't say, yeah, but I'm a little guy. I'm a teenager too. It's okay. And he can't admit it. And he's just like, Courtney, we can't see each other anymore, which is heartbreaking. But that's the great soap opera of comics and everything.
But you're right. They did kind of turn him into the sort of Green Lantern core of Shazam.
Yeah. I mean, that is kind of my feeling about
that's kind of a recurring thing that happens with a lot of characters. Like they just keep multiplying them. Like, all the stuff that I love about Captain Marvel, again, a lot of it is also the same thing with the old Superman comics. It was all what Otto Bender did. He would bring his pulp sci-fi sensibilities to things, and you get cool stuff like the Bottle City of Kandor, or you get Talkie Tawny, or it's like the guy just could not stop coming up with winners.
Oh God,
he was so good.
Yeah, I loved Bill Shelley's Bender biography that he wrote. Right. And I miss Bill Shelley. It's been It's literally been just over 2 years. And it's you mentioned Rose City. I was there, as you know, in 2019,
right?
And it was that weekend that we lost Bill. Because
it was, wasn't it? Oh.
Yeah. Well, and the only reason why I remember was I was still cranking out word balloons while I was staying at Bendis's that week, and I'm like, oh shit, Bill Shelley died, and I'm like, and part of me is always relieved that I have an opportunity to talk, or that I've already spoken to somebody. Certainly, God, and again, we're not that far from the anniversary of Ringo's passing and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it really started, I think, with Mike being one of the first ones where I'm like, well, God, I'm glad we had the opportunity to do the word balloons that we did before he passed away and everything.
Yeah, I mean, you had created something that he actively wanted, like, because he was just constantly at the drawing board, always busting it.
Yeah,
and he wanted to hear other cartoonists talking about what they were doing, and that's what you were doing, and it's like he loved it.
It was good. It was,
and I think the whole community, like, I don't know if you know what a service you do here.
That's nice, man.
Because you filled in, Coast to Coast AM isn't on anymore. They can't stay up all night listening to conspiracy theories, but you jumped in with your facts.
No, but well, that's funny because honestly, it was really another guy we lost sadly during COVID last year, David Anthony Kraft,
right?
Or actually earlier this year that he passed. It was reading Comics Interview. It was reading Amazing Heroes. It was reading Comics Journal back in the 80s and 90s and stuff that inspired me to do
magazines. They were great.
Yeah, well, that's what inspired what I do, and I'm too lazy to write. So and again, being a radio guy, it's easier for me to open a microphone and talk to you guys and everything and provide the forum for what we do. And the cool people compare me to John Peel, the old BBC rock interviewer.
You are like John Peel, damn it. This is like a Peel session we're doing. This is great. Oh man, now I feel like the Stone Roses or something. This is
exactly awesome. Man. Here we are. That's or I'll take Lester Bangs even. Absolutely, man. I cut my hair, so I got I'm a little cleaner than Lester was back in the day. But it's like, oh man, I'll take them. I'll take the comparisons.
Everybody kill for your hairline, John. You've got the best hairline in comics.
The barber was saying that today. She's like, you got great hair. I'm like, yeah, I'm very lucky. I don't think I'm going bald anytime soon. I think it's going to be all right.
Are you sure you're Greek, John?
Oh no, Greeks have good hair, man. Why I do see a lot of bald Greeks. You're right about that.
I don't know. The ones I see are always starting to lose it real fast.
My grandfather made it to 96, had a full head of hair when he passed. So and it's funny because all the men on my mom's side of the family, they're all bald. They're all bald and balding and stuff.
Ah, good.
But dad's side had the good thick hair and everything. So, oh yeah. Nice. So you're killing me. That's awesome. Do you have time to watch? Are you watching anything streaming wise, or I mean, obviously it's a challenge going to the theaters.
I wanted to get to the theater and see The Green Knight, and I still haven't done it.
Me neither. We talked about that. Yeah, I know on our, it's great. Everybody will do a Kinescope on Thursday nights. It's about an hour, and then we spend another 3 hours talking off the air. And Jeff having a family and a real life will bail early. But, because
they're all telling me to shut up. They're trying to go to bed. And I'm like, all right. You're keeping everybody awake.
I hope it's early enough that we're not keeping people awake over there.
I've been watching, like everybody else, I watched Ted Lasso.
Sure.
I've been watching Reservation Dogs, the Taika Waititi produced book story. I really enjoy that. I think it's great, and everybody ought to watch it. What else have I been watching?
Do you have Hulu?
I do.
Are you watching Only Murders in the Building?
No, you're like the fifth person to tell me to watch it. So yeah, I will watch it.
It was such a relief because it is Steve Martin and Martin Short, and no disrespect to Selena Gomez, who, by the way, absolutely keeps up with them. And that's amazing in itself. But it's Steve Martin and Martin Short. It's like, oh, you really want it to be great. Don't suck. And thank God it doesn't. And it's
good.
really, really great.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I always enjoy the conspicuous absence of Chevy Chase. Mythic Quest. Okay, I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, the Comics, Coffee, and Metal says Mythic Quest on Apple TV is excellent. I have to go back to, and of course with Ted Lasso too. I'm a little behind on my Ted Lasso, but and I'm doing it on purpose because I'm enjoying everything else so much. It's and again, I'm not trying to hate watch.
There's so much to watch. I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of good stuff now.
Absolutely. And I'm really impressed with Hulu lately. Hulu really has.
Hulu is. I'm so lucky. I think I got Hulu like at some deal a few years ago, like when it was like $6 a month.
Right.
I'm glad I locked that in because
me too.
It's been like I assumed like, oh, I'll beg out of here when the time's up, and I was like, nope, this is fine, keep going. Like if not for Hulu, I wouldn't have seen Lodge 49, which I love.
Yes, you told me about that. I gotta watch that, man.
Yeah,
You really know you. I know you love that. All the streamers are like the tortoise and the hare, where all of a sudden, like someone's on a sprint and has a lot of really good content all at once, and you forget about some of the others. And literally, that's how I felt about Hulu. And then all of a sudden, it's like, hey, watch Only Murders in the Building. Watch all the FX stuff that you're not paying attention to.
Yeah.
Another one, I love the McCartney. Rick Rubin.
The Rick Rubin talk. I want to watch that because
it's great.
I've heard some good quotes from it, and it's like, all right, I got to see this. So I've been saving that one for when I'm in a Beatles mood,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
What else? And even their we just turned into an ad for Hulu now, but like even the movies they're making, they're coming up with good stuff. Like I really enjoyed Palm Springs.
Okay.
It was hilarious. It was, I mean, it's the Groundhog Day scenario, but they really run with it. It's funny. You should watch it.
All right. That's good to hear.
Trying to remember. I watched something else on there the other day. Yeah. And they're getting older movies that are good. It's like, man, they're really putting up a fight with Netflix and Amazon.
Do you have Turner Classic Movies?
I don't. I wish I did.
You know what's weird?
I'd never get anything done if I had that.
All right. Well, yeah, I hear you. It really in the last month, it seems to me that they're still showing everything, thank God, but it really seems like in the primetime hours, they're gearing their stuff more towards 50s, 60s, and 70s, and showing less old Hollywood in the prime hours, and they're doing it more during the day and during the late hours and stuff. And I understand because I think they're trying to appeal to a younger audience. On the one hand, I get it. And also, we hate to admit our ages, but, hey, some of those great 80s movies, they're 40 years old now. Which, that's an old movie. I get it. I understand.
I didn't need to hear that.
Sorry. I know.
That was...
But also...
I hate, though, it's like when I tell kids, the History Channel used to actually have shows about history on it, and Discovery used to have science-based stuff, and now it's all just wacky pseudoscience if you're lucky.
Yes.
Are mermaids real? I'll answer that no.
Right.
It's like, what is this junk?
Ancient Aliens, which I always love because it's Chariots of the Gods respawn.
It's always, I went to the theater as a kid to see that.
With the Rod Serling narration.
Yeah, my parents dropped me off, let me watch that, and I was like, ooh. But you know what? Hey, Jack Kirby went to see it too, so clearly.
Right, and it's great how his mind exploded, and just it gave him so much more things to play with.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, I'm with you.
Kirby could watch just something with a kernel of an idea in it, and then he'd run off and turn that and fan the flame into a forest fire.
Oh my God. I used to blow off the 2001 comics. Go back to that stuff now.
That's incredible. Jesus. All that Machine Man style. I love it. It's so good.
Absolutely, man. Very funny. No, you're right about that. And to finish the thought about Turner and everything, they're really focusing on the 50s and 60s, neo-noir and the just like a movie like Paul Newman's Harper, and even a lot of the early George Hamilton, early 60s stuff where he was like the young hip
really?
dude.
Is that what they're watching?
Well, and I almost wonder if they're doing it on purpose to plan for, the revival, their live like Comic-Con kind of events. And now we can have George Hamilton sit down and talk about Once a Thief and Act One and some of these early 60s George Hamilton movies and stuff.
Fair enough. They can't get William Holden to come in.
Right. I mean, that's the thing, man. I mean, it's like the halls of fame in sports and stuff, where I feel like the bar is being lowered so that they can have inductees that are alive and talk about the good old days for this generation that to them, again, the 80s is ancient history. So I understand.
Well, it's like the way in the 90s when you were a punk in radio.
I was a punk in radio.
Yeah, but you took every opportunity to talk to an old timer you could. So you got in a lot under the wire. And that's great.
Yeah.
Your Joe Besser interview, I know you'll never forget it. Sorry, I'm just.
No, I'm glad you brought it up. That's true. I was high school.
I know I've added in for Joe Besser this week.
But I'm with you on that. Yeah, on Twitter, you're like, who's the worst stooge? And, and really it's, is it Dorita or is it Besser? And I'm like, oh, please, man.
As bad as Besser Dorita is the worst stooge.
I'll totally disagree. But I mean, and it's funny, James Tucker even
stooge. He's just like the lazy stooge. And Besser's not even a stooge. He's still just doing stinky or whatever.
Well, that's the thing, man. And I don't blame him for playing to his strengths. And it was just the Besser shorts, it just have everything wrong with them. They were cutting the budgets. They were, to their credit, they were trying new ideas.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could even argue that there are a couple rock and roll stooge shorts and stuff in the 50s. I mean, Larry's still playing his violin, but they had that woman who I see every, like, she's a character actress. She was in there's a Twilight Zone with the player piano that reveals everyone's, real thoughts and everything. And she was in a couple of those Joe Besser stooge shorts and everything prior to doing the Twilight Zone.
Mo Howard was probably calling his mom up. Can't you get me another brother? Come on. What's going on?
Exactly.
I need a Howard here.
But yeah, he was Jeff's mentioning, I interviewed Joe Besser when I was in high school, and he couldn't have been more of like an arrogant, self-centered guy. And like, the Stooges was a blip in my career. I was very funny before and after them as well.
Did you see my giant lollipop and my ribbon hat and my
stinky. Yeah, and all right, let's talk. All right, so the Abbott and Costello reruns, which if you have the Decades channel, they run really late at night in Central Time. It's probably like midnight West Coast time, and in fact, it's on tonight if you have the Decades channel. Okay. If you've never watched the Abbott and Costello TV show, it's rough. It's really hard to get into. But Joe Besser played this character, Stinky, who lived in their apartment building, and his character was a little boy. But it was Joe Besser. So
he's a baby Huey type.
Because he's
a sissy. To use the term.
He's a sissy. He's dressed like Little Lord Fauntleroy. He's got blonde curls. He's got the hat with the ribbon and the little suit with the little ruffled shirt and shit. But everyone treats him like a child, and his character is supposed to be a child. And he gets into it with Lou because they're kind of the same size and, frankly, the same age. And even as a 4-year-old kid, I wasn't in on the joke, and I was only dealing with what I saw in the reality. And I'm like, why are they treating this 50-year-old man like a child? And even to the point, as I told Jeff, there was like the beautiful blonde actress that lived in their building as well. And she treated him like a little boy, and she'd pinch his cheeks, but she'd stroke her chin. And it was almost kind of this weird sexual, oh, Stinky, you're so adorable. And I'm like, 50-year-old man, what the hell's going on? This is wrong.
I'm glad that even as a child, your hackles would raise and like, something's not right here.
I'm like,
this isn't okay.
It's like you're the only sane person in an insane asylum. I'm in the snake pit, I'm like, what the hell's going on, man? and it made no sense to me, and it didn't make me laugh. It really disturbed me.
Yeah.
It repelled me. So that helped, I think, with my Joe Besser hate. I won't deny it. But my favorite is Fake Shemp.
Oh yeah.
The guy who they literally made like 2 or 3. They remade 2 or 3 Shemp episodes and added new scenes. And they had a stand-in after Shemp died, who you never saw his face. He was always to the back, and he tried to do the beep beep beep, kind of weird laugh that Shemp would do.
Get down and roll around on the floor in a circle. Can you do that? You can just
Joe,
imagine Mo trying to direct him.
Joe Parma, I believe, was his name.
No.
And it's great because Svengoolie, Rich Coase, the great horror host who's based here in Chicago, for years did also hosted Three Stooges shows locally here in Chicago and is a real Stooge expert. And I'm, when I have him on, I'm like, all right, come on, Rich, Joe Parma. Tell me your thoughts on fake Shemp. Let's talk about Joe Parma. And honestly, everybody watch YouTube and you can find clips of fake Shemp. And they're just, I mean, I don't think they syndicate them anymore because they are so embarrassingly bad.
Fake Shemp sounds like Bigger Luke, like it's some kind of weird internet myth that comes up, like Slender Man or something like that. But I
Beware
love
Fake Shemp, Candyman, the Candyman of the Stooges.
I wish there had been someone like you to go around, but before you were old enough to do it, and talk to a lot of these local hosts of shows who dealt with different regions, because
I would have loved that.
Yeah, because that kind of stuff fascinates me. I mean, I love local horror show hosts.
Ghoulardi and the Ghoul.
Yeah, when I was a kid in North Carolina, we had Dr. Paul Bearer, who hosted Shock Theater. And then at some point he went away. And then there was another one on the NBC affiliate. And then there were these 2 guys that I got on a UHF channel late at night. I'm like 5 years old. I don't know why my parents are letting me stay up so late. But I'm like 5 years old. I'm flipping through the UHF, which, as we know, was required thanks to our pal Newton Minow, the first head of the FCC, who demanded that they provide UHF as a frequency. Anyway, but there were a couple of guys who were probably like college guys who dress up as Dracula and the Invisible Man hosting a show. And I wrote a letter to them and they read it on air. And ever since then, I was just in love with any cheesy little local show or kids show that showed cartoons, or we had in Raleigh, there was Uncle Paul, and I'm forgetting his last name, but he was actually a really accomplished jazz pianist. But he was he had these Coke bottle glasses. I mean, these things were this thick. And he would just play a little walk around while kids would walk in a circle and stuff like that. But apparently, when the cameras were off and everything, he'd do one of his jazz standards, and he was really good. And
wow.
And he'd go play around at clubs and everything and sit in with real bands, and he was the real deal. But me and other kids just knew him as the one who showed old Hanna-Barbera Pixie and Jinx cartoons and everything. One of the other ones I always saw that came out of Greensboro, North Carolina. Here, how problematic is this? And this is how you know I'm from the South. He was called the Old Rebel.
Okay.
Thank God he wasn't dressed as a Confederate soldier. In fact, he just wore a top hat and a vest. I don't know why.
Okay. So he's more Southern aristocracy than
it was more like this antebellum thing or whatever. But it's Jesus. Boy, I'd like to see how that'd play today.
Wow. Yeah, no kidding. Jesus. Absolutely. Well, that's
the same thing. He'd show Heckle and Jekyll or whatever, something like that.
Well, that's I grew up in suburban Chicago, in the town that I specifically grew up in. A lot of the WGN people, the Superstation.
Oh yeah, Superstation, man.
They all lived in my town, and we'd see them all the time, and they were involved with their kids went to my high school. So, I knew them as friends' parents and stuff. And they really were of that initial 50s and 60s generation that made local TV. And so, and it was great. I mean, we had a high school radio station, and they would come and talk to us and really mentor us. Not directly, but at least they were available for special nights where we could ask them questions. What did you just say?
Did Bozo come out there?
Yes. Yeah. Bob Bell. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And they all worked on the Bozo show.
Right.
And I was on the Bozo show when I was 5, and it was Halloween. And this was around the Apollo program. And I had an awesome, because little kids' costumes weren't just sometimes those BS plastic bags that would have a Spider-Man image on your chest and a bad plastic mask. Mine really looked like Will Robinson's all silver Lost in Space outfit.
Whoa.
And and it had a helmet. Or my parents bought me a helmet. I have no idea. But it was Halloween. I was 5, and it was Bozo around Halloween. So Ray Rayner, who was the morning clown showing Bugs Bunny and all the great Hanna-Barbera shorts, he was a clown on Bozo. Oliver and he grabbed me by the hand. I had no idea what was happening.
One of the lesser clowns on Bozo.
Yes, he was a Lieutenant Marvel to Bozo's Captain Marvel. So he leads me out on the floor, and he puts me on an X, and he's like, "All right, look at me." And he's like, "All right, when I tell you, you salute." And I'm like, "All right." And I did, and apparently I was on TV. It was the first time I was on TV, and my dad's at his restaurant bar with all the boozers at noontime watching, and they're like, "Oh, you did great," you know. So I think that's what kind of was like. I think I want to do this all the time. I think that was my first indication.
And see,
that
nowadays anybody could I'll search around on the internet long enough to find. There's no way you could find that.
No, I doubt anyone was videotaping back then or filming. I mean, GN literally locally, they were the last station to go to videotape, even on their news. And I remember when and again, man, I've had this weird Forrest Gump life. When the Nazis petitioned to march in Skokie and got their petition, there was a big press conference at the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union,
right,
saying, "We don't like their politics, but this is freedom of speech."
They are, in fact, Nazis.
They were Illinois, as they say in the Blues
They
Brothers,
are the Illinois Nazis, as in the Blues
Brothers. So, I'm 13 and I'm watching this live press conference because it was a block away from my dad's restaurant downtown Chicago. And Dad's like, "Go watch it." What could go wrong? Thank God nothing did go wrong. But
Dad.
But I'm watching all the news crews videotape, and Channel 9 was filming. And I'm like, and again, I'm like 13 or so. So I'm like, do you have time to get that developed? Doesn't it take a week if you take this to Walgreens to the drugstore to get your film developed? Like, no, we develop it at home. They're like, we'll have it on by the 6 o'clock news. And I'm like, okay, great. But yeah, they were still doing like real film rather than, like you see old news from the 70s and stuff like that, as opposed to videotape, because they hadn't transferred yet, which is crazy to think of. But yeah, no, it was really cool to grow up when local TV mattered. Now it's so come full circle. And in fact, I hear promos of, "Hey, we're live and local. Don't forget, we're live and local." And it's like, well, yeah, it used to be for decades.
Yeah, it was a given.
Right. And then they went to all the syndicated crap, the judge shows and all the crap you see now during daytime TV and even in some cases nighttime TV. And no, it's come full circle. And now the value once again is local broadcasting. So it was great growing up with that. And also GN was an incredibly good partner to our high school and would donate radio and television equipment to us that they no longer wanted, once they'd upgrade and stuff. They would donate to our high school. So we always had great, really solid equipment and terrific people to help us learn how to broadcast.
I'm surprised you didn't have a lot of Zenith stuff too. That was the Zenith plant.
Yes, my uncle, the only family member that kind of understood what I was doing. My dad died young, so he really only got to see a little of my high school stuff before he passed away. But my uncle, who married into the family, was a Zenith stereo and television retailer. So he kind of got it.
Okay.
And everyone else is like, "John, radio, when are you going to get a real job?" And he's like, Johnny knows what he's doing. Leave Johnny alone.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
was so my Uncle Frank. And I'm like, God, Uncle Frank, thank God you're here, because really, like, you're the only guy in the family that gets what I'm doing and stuff. And he's like, keep doing it, man. You're doing great. And I'm like, all right, cool.
I always thought Chicago's this kind of wonderland of having its reinforced by the location of it, have its own identity that's not influenced by the coasts
Right.
at the time, like the rest of America. So Chicago gets its own, operates by its own gravity and own laws of physics. It's like, if you drive in this part, you're going to smell M&M Mars chocolate when
Right.
you come down here, and and if you drive over here, you're going to freeze from water, from air coming off the lake. And, it's just.
If you drive through Peoria, you can smell the potato chips from the Jay's potato chip plant.
Yeah.
But, honestly, really all of television and really across the country, every major city was its own fiefdom when it came to broadcasting. And you're right. I mean, Chicago and Philadelphia were right there with New York and LA in terms of being important national puzzle pieces. But like you mentioned, Raleigh and other big markets from other parts of the country and stuff. And yeah, the top 50 television and radio markets, they made good broadcasting, good local broadcasting.
Yeah, so
for a very long time.
They'd have their clown and their late night vampire hosting things.
Oh yeah, the Shock Theater.
George Clooney's dad was
Nick Clooney, Cincinnati.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, he was a major news person in Cincinnati broadcasting. Absolutely. And we saw him, host AMC in its early years.
Yeah.
Nick and everything. But yeah, I love that stuff. In fact, my buddy Mike Cronenberg, who makes Ringside Seat, the boxing magazine, and also does Noir City with Eddie Muller, he and his brother had the original Shock television press kit that went to local stations with the package of Universal monster movies in the 50s. And they expanded it into this really cool coffee table book that looks at the era and uses the photographs and the things that were press materials for you to make commercials and newspaper ads of the classic movies and stuff. And they really did research a lot of the local, cities and everything, and what they did with the Shock Theater TV package.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that stuff. I truly think before the 90s, there are still gaps in the 20th century history that haven't been completely recorded a million times over. I mean, I'm like, my cute line is every fart after 1990 has been recorded for posterity.
Oh yeah.
And, like it or not.
Yeah.
But I love exploring, again, that those early days of broadcasting from the 20s, through the 70s and 80s and stuff.
Yeah, it's the Wild West for a while there,
Yeah, yeah.
And you could horribly screw up and not have it take you down.
Yes.
You could learn a lesson by maybe you got kicked out of a restaurant and then you realize, okay, I'll tone it down a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, it wasn't a national incident. No, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Too funny, man. Well, there you go, Jeff. I mean, no, I as always, good tangents and fun conversation, all wrapped around the idea of Blighter. And here, once again, is Blighter himself. But check out the Kickstarter campaign. It still has, almost a full month left as we're recording this. 26 days as of this recording right now.
Yeah,
but
you
it's
can
live.
Find it, if you don't find it quickly on Kickstarter, just look at me on Twitter. I'm just Jeff Parker. I talk about it nonstop. Next week, I'm going to chill out a little bit on the pushing, and I'm going to focus on doing update content there, where I'm going to talk more about process and things like that.
Okay.
And I'll go in probably a little more of what we were talking about tonight. And so if people are process junkies, buy my book and order the book. It's going to come out probably in next June. We're setting it way out to make sure it gets done. And it's, it's not an immediate payoff, but I guess if you did get the digital version, you might get it a little faster. That's of course what I urge people like, over in Europe to do. It's like shipping is insane nowadays. And everybody on Kickstarter tells you like, we'll have to add in shipping on you after the fact because it's so volatile.
Yeah, it changes all the time.
Yeah, and we've got a madman still in charge of the USPS and right now. And hey, there's my politics. So it's like, yeah, if you're far away, just get the digital version. How much room do you have in your house anyway? Come on. It's like that's generally the way I order.
I'm so the same way.
Things too. It's like good. I'll just have this here. It's not a book, but if I love it enough, I'll eventually track them down and get the book, and somebody's going to sign it.
Well, I just always want to read it, and then I'm the same way, man. I'm starting to realize that I can't keep filling my bookshelves and stuff. It's like something's got to give. God, I saw Augie DeBleek was saying that he was purging a bunch of big books. Or
oh my God, I can only imagine the library that guy has.
Roger wants you to we should do a book about fake Shemp.
Fake Shemp.
The Joe Parma story.
Fake Shemp's next.
You likely know that fake Jerry Lewis, Sammy Petrillo, someone is writing.
Always bring those guys. Those are the worst. They are so terrible.
Duke Mitchell and Sammy Petrillo. If you've never heard of this, everybody, they were literally a poor man's Martin and Lewis. And Sammy Petrillo would blatantly imitate Jerry Lewis to the point where Jerry Lewis hired him and then basically sat on his ability to perform and would pay him not to imitate himself. But you can find it even on I'm sure YouTube has a poor copy of I think it was called Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla.
Yeah.
And you'll see a guy that you'll swear is Jerry Lewis, but it's Sammy Petrillo. And Duke Mitchell is like the Dean Martin of the group.
Yeah, it was just weird. Horrible. The whole concept of having knockoffs of well-known celebrities going around and people going, we can't afford Martin and Lewis. Let's go watch Petrillo and Mitchell.
Yep.
But then again, it's kind of analogous to like in the 60s. I remember I'm forgetting the writer's name. I know I follow him on Twitter, but wrote a great piece about all the various acts calling themselves the Zombies touring in the 60s, including the early ZZ Top.
Yep.
They were the Texas Zombies or whatever. Yep. And people were going around because you didn't know what these acts looked like or whatever. If they could learn a few of the hit songs and then do the rest of their own, crowds would go for it and
sure
turn out. And, if someone paid off the DJ, not that DJs can be bought off.
No, never.
Never. That was a big thing, like stand-in, like regional versions of popular acts. I mean, like, say, like the Stones or the Beatles, you couldn't get away with that one.
Well, they wouldn't call themselves the Stones and the Beatles, but like the Knickerbockers had a one hit called Lies that totally sounds like a Beatles song. And oh God, I can't remember the name of the Bob Dylan knockoff.
The what?
The Bob Dylan knockoff, and I can't even name the song, but it literally does sound like like a Rolling Stone Bob Dylan. Yeah, I don't remember. I'm sorry, I'm not doing us justice by remembering. Right. But the hippie shake, the swinging medallions. That was another song that sounded kind of like hell. The Munsters had a band perform "I Want to Hold Your Hand," and it certainly wasn't the Beatles, but they did a passable version. Or I loved when Chad and Jeremy were on a bunch of shows, Batman and Dick Van Dyke.
Chad and Jeremy were on Batman. I believe Catwoman stole their voice.
Oh, nice, yes,
or whatever. And apparently, all of Britain was grieving, and they were really pushing, please, Batman, get them their voices back. And then he goes, and I'll do my utmost to resolve this international incident.
Londinium. I always liked when they were in, it wasn't London, it was Londinium.
Yeah, it's I never understood that. Like, Why? Why?
Like Gotham City, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, are they doing the thing where you can't have real names for anything like the DC universe does? It's like I never Londinium. It's like it sounds like an isotope. I don't know.
And as much as I like that Chad and Jeremy Batman, I love them even more on Dick Van Dyke, where they're the Redcoats. And it's totally like the Ed Sullivan Beatles thing where Rob's got to hide the duo at his house from the screaming teenagers and stuff. Very funny.
Paul Revere and the Raiders should have been in there somewhere, but
that was the code. That was the code word that Mel Cooley, when he would smuggle him in, it's like, who's at the door? Paul Revere. And he had the Redcoats.
Of course. By the way, I know I've mentioned this before, but Mel Cooley is one of my all-time favorite character names. And Richard Deacon's one of my all-time favorite character names.
Oh, he's the best.
He's just gold on everything he was in.
Yes.
Whether he's
even
Rutherford's dad.
Yes, Leave It to Beaver. Yeah.
But he's hilarious on Dick Van Dyke. He's so funny.
No, I absolutely agree. That's hilarious. And also, I was going to mention when Boyce and Hart were on I Dream of Jeannie, and even crazy Wall of Sound Phil Spector is in that episode.
Oh my God. I don't remember that.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah, like Jeannie, like, they need a band to play a benefit at the Air Force Base. And Jeannie just goes around and picks up teenagers randomly. One's buying a record album, one's a busboy at a restaurant, and she puts together this band, and it really is Boyce and Hart. And supposedly they've never picked up musical instruments before, and she blinks the talent into them. Blink. Yes.
Yeah.
And they start playing these great Boyce and Hart. Boyce and Hart only had like one or two really national hits. They're really more known better for writing all the Monkees music, or a lot of the Monkees music. And but they were, they'd have LA hits and regional West Coast hits and stuff. And they great sound, great 60s pop sound. But even at the end of the episode, they're doing an audition for Phil Spector, and she blinks the band together again, but she forgets the drummer. So she goes on drums, and she's playing the drums with Boyce and Hart. Of course she is.
Of course.
It's a great episode.
That reminds me of some weird thing from my childhood when like I was like enjoying the Beatles or something. I was little kids always listen to Yellow Submarine or whatever.
Sure.
And because that's the cartoon you would see.
You bet.
They would still show it.
Oh yeah.
And I remember my dad coming through. Oh, no one listened to the Beatles around here. I went, what? And I'm like, he goes, no, everybody listened to Dave Clark 5. And I'm like, that can't be right. It's like one of the many times I was starting to question what my dad said, but he might have been right in that whatever station he listened to didn't play the Beatles or whatever. It's like, but wait, my aunt was huge into the Beatles and she like had like all this stuff and everything. Your little sister was really big on so somebody was playing the Beatles.
Well, but he isn't wrong, especially in London when they were first. In fact, today on Turner Classic Movies, they ran one of the Dave Clark 5 60s movies, Having a Wild Weekend. And even McCartney admits that like when Beatlemania was happening here, like 64, 65, in London, the Dave Clark 5 was like neck and neck with the Beatles.
It's
from
weird.
a pop teenage standpoint. And also, really, Dave Clark had great songs. They had fun songs.
I didn't mean to disparage the Dave
Clark. No,
5.
Of course not. But it is kind of interesting that at the moment, it's like
Oasis.
It's like baseball in New York in the 50s when it was Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, and Duke Snider, who's the best outfielder. Mm-hmm. And it's now it's like, and especially poor Duke Snider, who again in his era was a very effective and very talented hitter and outfielder, and was considered neck and neck with Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays. Now it's like, are you kidding me? Whatever. So
that's funny. The way history kind of writes people out.
Absolutely. And the Hollies is another great British invasion band that, man, you look back at their body of work.
Which one?
The Hollies.
Oh yeah. Oh God, yeah, the Hollies.
Yeah. Graham Nash. That's where Graham Nash came from.
No, I love the Hollies. One of my favorite things is to go by a group that should have been more influenced by him, probably like XTC did they did it 2 albums as Dukes of Stratosphere, where they kind of just started doing all the 60s stuff they love, and they just
Yep.
like by adopting a pseudonym and kind of characters. They do one like they had a song, The Vanishing Girl, which is essentially a Hollies song, but it's so good. It's like the world's best Hollies song. And it's like, oh God, I wish they had just pretended to be the Hollies a few more times. This was such good stuff. And of course, we often get into this where we lament the fact that the Kinks didn't get to tour America at the key time they should have. So they didn't become as big over here as they would have been if they had been all over the place. But I don't know. I think Dave punched a guy or something that.
Yeah, some sort of public incident.
Some kind of imagine one of the Davies brothers getting in trouble. And, so
I told you again in my Forrest Gump life, I actually got to hang out with Ray Davies at a breakfast broadcast at our rock station.
That is cool.
And, oh my God, rock history. I mean, it's just insane, and it couldn't have been sweeter. Funny guy, really fun, great storyteller. Yeah, that was amazing. Man, dude, believe me, I pinched myself. I was very lucky.
That is
very lucky.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So too funny, man. There you go. All right. Again,
did we crush it? Did we do everything we needed to do here?
I think so. All right.
Good.
Once again, letting people know about Blighter, and again, check Google, but really follow Dave on Twitter. Follow Jeff on Twitter. Dave.
No, I don't feel so bad.
Davies.
Yeah, follow the Davies boys, the Kings, on Twitter.
Follow Jeff. It's at Jeff Parker on Twitter. He has links to his Kickstarter, but you can even, if you put Jeff Parker and Blighter and Kickstarter in your Google search, you'll find it. It pops up right away.
And next week, if you're in the comic shop, get that new version of Underground by me and Steve.
Indeed.
It looks really sharp. It's got the back cover, but this time it's red, so it stands out from the old printings.
Very cool, man. Excellent.
Thank
you, dude. Good hangout as always. Hopefully you'll join us next Thursday for Kinescope, and we'll talk about Sid Caesar.
Oh, that's a very tempting one, so I probably will.
Okay, very good. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week for the brand new week of Word Balloon Live. Until then, stay safe,